if somebody came and offered me $1 billion to buy Explorium, would I say yes? Yes.
Also, if that same millionaire is looking for a podcast, we are not opposed.
Well, I tell you, I'll make a deal with you guys right now. If Constellation Brands comes to Explorium and buys me for $1 billion, I promise you I will come and buy the Tap Takeover podcast for $1 million a piece.
Okay.
There you go.
on tape. That is on tape.
You got that.
Sold.
Not to be a cheap bastard after getting $1 billion.
Cheers.
You've stumbled on into the Tap Takeover podcast.
It's so big. Like, so big.
We have taken you, our faithful listeners, to some pretty interesting places in the past. Whether it be the middle of nowhere to visit Central Waters in Amherst, Wisconsin, or even the 175,000 square foot barrel warehouse in Chicago to visit with Goose Island. But today, we are going to the mall. To talk with owner Mike Doble of the Explorium Brewpub in Greendale, Wisconsin. Opened in 2016 by Mike and his wife Joan and located inside of the Southridge Mall, the folks at the Explorium are dedicated to the principles of exploring, tasting, and discovering all of the experiences and flavors that life has to offer. And as such, they have developed a beer menu which works hand in hand with a wonderful dining experience. Today we'll be exploring some of those flavors with a live tasting while we discuss the benefits and challenges of operating in a shopping center, some Florida brewery collaborations, social media do's and don'ts, and of course, the great Globe Heist of 2017. Mike, thanks for joining the Tap Takeover podcast.
I'm happy to be here, man.
Did you say not happy to be here?
No, I'm happy to be here. Happy. Hashtag mall beer.
I think we've got to start with a question that we usually save till the end, but since you brought out your collection here, let's just go straight to talk about your cellar. And you, as we were setting up here, you said you rarely actually drink or actually drink from your cellar. So let's talk about some of the stuff that we have here and some of the beer that has inspired you.
Yeah, right on. Hey, thanks for having me. First of all, it's awesome to have you guys here. When you own a brewery, you end up getting just beer fatigue. We taste beer all the time. When we do all of our quality control testing, we do it early in the morning. So by the time you get to the afternoon, and it's time to relax. I typically gravitate towards cocktails or bourbon. As far as my cellar goes, it's funny because my brewers are always getting on me because I got too big of a collection collecting in the cellar because people give you bottles and I see a beer that I really like, and there's a vast array of beers that I really like. So people always ask me all the time, what's your favorite style of beer? I don't have a favorite style. My favorite style is one that's been made well and tastes good. So I kind of brought out some beers that inspire me out of my cellar. First of all, the brewery out in California does some great beers. That's that is a Flemish red. My dad was an Army guy, so we ended up living all over the world. While my formidable years from 6th grade to when I graduated from high school was in Belgium. The Belgian style beers are near and dear to my heart. One of my favorite styles is the Flemish red. Generally, they're primary fermented and then put into secondary with a slow-acting yeast called Brettanomyces, and they just create all these great complex flavors. They're generally aged in oak. So if you ever seen those big oak fermenters called footers, that's how they're aged. And the brewery does a great job with their Flemish red. One of my other favorites is Rodenbach. So I pulled out a bottle of the brewery's Old Tart, which is one of my favorites on the planet. I'd have to say Rodenbach's probably more favorite of mine, but this is in my cellar because it's harder to get. I saw it, I grabbed it, so one of those inspirational beers.
Yeah, so the brewery has inspired you to do some of the the sour things that you guys have been mixing with 1840. You guys did a collaboration there?
Exactly, yeah. One of the hard things about owning a brewery that doesn't do souring is that if you introduce souring agents into your brewery, there's a chance that you could get a problem with beers that are soured unintentionally. So we're really careful about not bringing souring agents into the brewery. But when 1840 announced that they were opening, and I met Kyle, I actually met Kyle through the crafter space. Just an awesome guy, very skilled. does sours, and all he does is sours. And so to collaborate with him and do some really cool things like our sour our Scotch ale and do some stuff like that, stuff I've always wanted to do. It was really a cool opportunity. So we've had some sours on tap here. We have a dedicated sour line. If Kyle's got the beer available, we put it on tap. Otherwise, I wish, maybe one day we'll open a second location where we can do some sours of our own. But until then, I just kind of live vicariously through Kyle, and hopefully he'll sour some stuff for me. We can put it on tap here. So.
Well, thanks for sharing this one, because this oud tart is absolutely fantastic. We've all had a little bit of trouble, some of us, getting into the very, very sour beers, but we find that the tart, the fruity ones, are kind of our gateway into that beer style. And this is a fantastic example of it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I like this one. That's why it's in my cellar. It's just a really great well-made beer.
So as we enjoy the brewery's Flanders Red, let's learn a little bit more how you got started, Mike, into brewing. Like, what's your background? Did you homebrew at all?
I kind of had a little bit of an advantage. My parents started a homebrew store in the early 90s called the Brew Shack in Tampa, Florida. The Brew Shack was a kind of a labor of love of my older brother Johnny, and he kind of sucked my parents in to help him with financing and get the thing going. And the reality is that was kind of their first step into the beer culture. Before that, it was just a little bit of home brewing. My brother was an avid home brewer and whatnot. But because they were tied up with all their resources into this homebrew store for birthdays and Christmas and whatever, all I got was homebrew kits. So, the first birthday was, the beginner's kit. The Christmas after that was the advanced kit. And then, after that was all these beer recipes that they would box up. So some of them were partial mash. So it was a little, it was a can of extract. It was a bag of grains, and then the little bags of hops and whatnot. I kind of dipped my toe in the water doing those kits from their homebrew store. I probably homebrewed beer, and I actually made a really awesome replication of Pete's Wicked Ale. I don't know if you guys remember that beer. It was before your time.
Absolutely.
But, I love Pete's Wicked Ale. Well, before it was acquired and the recipe got super dumbed down, that was before the days of Untapped and whatnot. So, people really didn't know it got dumbed down, but I could taste the difference. I don't know if you guys could. But I made a super good replication of Pete's Wicked Ale, and then after about 5 years of brewing, I stopped for a while, busy with life and kids and blah, blah, blah. In the meantime, my mom and dad and my brother ended up opening Tampa Bay Brewing Company. And that was a brew pub in Ybor City on the east side of downtown Tampa, and the kind of little party district. For us, it would be Brady Street, right? It's kind of that area where all the college kids go and whatnot to drink, and good bars and everything else. So they had this great brew pub down there. Me from afar, watching what was going on with the beer scene and the brewing culture. My family owns this brew pub. It was always in the back of my mind, I want to do this someday. In the meantime, I'm living here in Wisconsin, raising a family, working as a civil engineer, living in my cubicle farm. In 2014, I was pretty much fed up with what I was doing. My mom and dad and my brother wanted to build a production brewery, so they were ready to graduate from the brew pub to this production brewery, and my mom called me and said, hey, we need some help. We'd love to have you help us, get this brewery done. I'll cut out the gory details, but long story short, in 2014, my wife and I moved our family down to Tampa. I designed and built this new brewery for them. When it was all done, I helped my mom get the restaurant open. We came back here to Wisconsin, settled, we kept our house here, so we came back to our home, settled down, and I sat down with the wife one night, and I'm like, we don't have that kind of brew pub in Milwaukee that they have in Tampa. There's a lot of brew pubs and breweries and whatnot, but nothing that's the same as what they do. And I was like, there's an opportunity in the market to do that, and I really want to do it so bad. So we ended up finding actually a good business partner, a friend of mine for 15 years. He said, hey man, I got a little cash. You got the desire. You want to get it done? Let's do it. So, looking around, we looked all over. I'll save you some of the details on it, but we looked all over Milwaukee. We looked downtown when you remember Lackey and Joy's on Water Street?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, so Lackey and Joy's on Water Street, I heard it was closing. I immediately left my office, ran over there to go check it out, because that would have been like, oh my God, yeah, Water Street, this brew pub, oh my God. It had already been snapped up by a developer, no opportunity there. I looked at a place in Tosa, I looked at 84 South, which is on 84th and Layton, not far from here. Timelines were looking goofy, and through a friend of a friend, kind of mentioned that Southridge Mall was looking, and I'm like, oh, Southridge Mall, I haven't been there in like a dozen years, And the mall manager ended up calling me and saying, hey, I know you haven't been here in a while, but check it out. We got great parking, we got a great outside outside patio space. We got this great spot. We can accommodate you. We really need a local brand in the mall.
That was one of our big questions, is how a brewery ends up in the mall. And I think you answered it to some degree. And we can see it now, and we see this beautiful patio out back, and, we see the fantastic layout that you have in here. But, I mean, what did this look like when you first walked in? This must have just been a shell of a former store of some sort.
It's a double unit, right?
Yeah, so when I first walked in here, it was built out as a Ruby Tuesday. So Ruby Tuesday is a bar, a salad bar, and a bunch of booths, right? And when I walked in, I'm like, ooh, this is kind of small. It was 4,500 square feet. And I said, I can't make it work in here. Well, what if the unit next door was available? I'm like, ooh, if they're moving out, we could add another 1,500 square feet. And I was like, okay, now we're up to 6,000-ish, and that's okay, but I need space to store our beer. I mean, we're on the second floor. I got all this beer. We got to put it in serving tanks. Well, we have a storage space right down below, coincidentally. So all these little pieces fell into place. In the end, we ended up with about 7,500 square feet. 6,000 on this level. Down below, we have about another, 1,500 square feet. Outside patio. I talked to the village of Greendale. They were super supportive about doing an outside bar. And, parking came, we have ample parking. We got all this stuff. So everything just kind of fell into place. And then I'm like, okay, wait a second. What's the price tag of this joint? The mall kind of came out with a very good offer for us to, to entice us to get in with some assistance to help build it out. Very fair rent. And I talked to a lot of other brewery owners. I know what they pay for rent. And our rent was very fair. And this is a great spot. I got walk by traffic. I got, normal everyday people, which for me is a big part of my brand, is getting normal everyday people to come in and try something new. All that stuff is awesome.
How big of a role does educating your customer come into play here at the Explorium?
It's huge. So here's what I say to people. As a brewery owner, I missed the chapter on you got to open your brewery in a crappy industrial space, right? I missed that chapter, right? How many breweries do you know have opened up in an industrial space or an underutilized area or whatever else? We're in like prime retail space.
Well, it's all about cost, right? So that was going to be my big question: is malls are notoriously expensive, yet you were able to work out a reasonable rent compared to everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is it's a cost benefit to the property owner, right? Property owner sees a cool local brand that wants to open, and I'm a cool local brand that wants a reasonable rent, so I don't have to open up in a crappy industrial space, right? So that kind of goes back to the regular people, right? A lot of people, when they drive by that brewery that's opened up in an industrial area, they're a little intimidated. I mean, they're not craft beer drinkers, and if they walk in and, they're going into this space that only has beer and whatnot, it's a little intimidating. So what we try to do is build a brand that's not intimidating. You walk by in the mall and you look inside, you see brewing tanks, you see a brew house, but you see this nice, warm, comfortable space with, people having a good time and talking. It invites people in. If you notice when you walk by in the corridor, if you look towards our pizza area, you'll see the fire. When you're inside at the bar and you look towards the fireplace, you see the fire. Fire's like, people are like moths to fire, right? So as a designer, I try to bring, those elements in with the end goal of just enticing somebody to at least stop, check things out, give it a try, and hopefully they discover that it's something they like. And so far, so good. I mean, we've brought in, a big part of our brand is educating people about what we do, and that we don't put any crap in our beer. We don't put any, corn syrup, rice syrup, preservatives, and all that other junk in our beer. And we can still make it taste like something that's palatable, something they're used to, something they've been sold by the big beer companies over all these years. And our hope is that if they try something and like it, they come back. And then eventually they try something new. And eventually we got them under our wing and we have them into the fold, into the craft beer scene. So now they're going to go to that brewery that was built up in the industrial space, and they're not intimidated because I like craft beer. I'm in the fold. I'm part of the culture. I'm part of this. And they can go and visit all those other places. That's why, I know you guys notice this, I'm very much about supporting other breweries. All the time, every day, I visit them. When I do my Movember thing, I visit breweries to raise money for Movember. I do that because I'm all about building culture. And if I can build culture and I can get people to go to all those places and I can build more craft beer drinkers, then boom, we got it licked. Us as small breweries, we can take on the big guys by educating people, giving them something that's palatable, creating this culture that's cool and local, and it's a lot of fun. There's not much to not like about it.
You probably have more residential around you than most of the other breweries in the city too, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the downsides to being in the mall is that we're in the southwest side. We're very much a bedroom community. We're in an area where people go downtown to work, or they go to Northwestern Mutual on South 27th Street, or they go away from this area. So during the daytime, we're very quiet. One of the things we're doing to address that being so quiet, because we still got to pay rent, right, is we're selling some beer out in the market. We're going to local bars and saying, hey, you're in a busy area at lunchtime. We have this great lighter ale that you could put on tap, and so we're doing some of that. That's one of the hard parts about being in this area versus some of the other places that we could go, is that daytimes can be a little slower, but it's also a good opportunity for us to bring in potential accounts and other people while it's quiet. My attention's not divided, and we can kind of present our brand to them.
We talk all the time about gateway beers. The beer that can get a person out of the macro scene and into the craft scene, or even get a beer drink, a wine drinker, or a liquor drinker into drinking beer. And it sounds like you're kind of positioning yourself as a gateway brewer, a brewery that's going to be very accessible to folks who don't necessarily think about going to a brewery, who are now not going to be as intimidated about going to other breweries. And I think you can hear some of the success of that. You're going to hear it on the podcast today because of the crowd noise, and everybody's here having fun. You've got a bags tournament going on. I mean, you guys are getting the butts in the seats, and that's very admirable for a first year brewery. So
yeah, thanks. I'm glad you're
tip our caps to you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you appreciate that. And the thing is one thing that we try to do is not specialize in anything. I hear it all the time about a brewery. Oh, well, those guys are really great with stouts, or those guys are really great with IPAs, or those guys are really great with German styles, or those guys are really great with the Belgian styles, and all that sort of thing. What we try to do is not specialize in anything. So you talk about gateway beers. We have 24 taps. We have 24 taps on all the time. Of those 24 taps, we always have 3 or 4 beers that if somebody walks up and says, hey, my elderly mother only drinks Miller Lite, do you have something that she could drink because she wants a beer? I have a beer for that. If somebody comes up...
What would that beer be?
So our Sutter Seeker Golden Ale is on all the time, and that's a really great alternative to, even though it's an ale, and we're comparing it to a light American lager, it's a really great alternative to like Miller Lite. If somebody's looking to step out of that, Miller light range, then we'll offer them our Patagonian Hitchhiker Lager. It's a nice effervescent lager with a little bit of bite. Goes really well with summertime and all those things we think about when we're thinking about light effervescent lagers. And then our cream ale, I get a lot of people that come in and say, hey, I like craft beer. Spotted Cow is my go-to. And I'm like, well, that's great, because we have a beer for that. Our beer is our cream ale. Our cream ale is a great heavy mouthfeel cream ale. It doesn't have the same cloudiness that Spotted Cow has and whatnot, but it's got a ton of flavor without being bitter, without being too hoppy. Just a little bit of sweetness to it, and people love it.
Well, you're talking about all these different types of beers. One question that we always ask is, if you could take over the taps of the Tap Takeover podcast, what beers would you pick to take over those taps that would tell your story?
Do you have more than 24 taps? Otherwise, I'll take them all over.
We're going to limit you. We'll limit you to 5.
Okay, so if I had to put 5 beers on, and it's an interesting question, because I walk into places all the time and say, hey, do a tap takeover, and they have 5 or 6 taps. If I'm going to do 5 or 6 taps, I would most likely do our Patagonian Hitchhiker Lager as our lighter style. I probably wouldn't do something as light as our Golden Ale or our Cream Ale. So I'd probably do the lager. I'd probably do our Scotch Ale for that malt forward and low bitterness, nice drinking beer. For something dark, I'd probably do our Livingstone's Porter. It's a core brand. It's a nice, easy drinking porter. You can't go wrong with it. It's not too much roastiness, and not too much sweetness. It's a nice balance. On the hoppy side, I would either suggest our Captain Kidd's IPA or our Amelia's APA. They're both great, crisp, hoppy beers. If they wanted to go really big and have something high alcohol, I always go with the barley wine. I love our barley wine. It's really good. When our quad is on, to be honest with you, I'd probably suggest our quad over the barley wine. but it would kind of go between the two. And then for that last one, I'd usually pick one of our specialty beers.
You got to get the beer nerds out of bed, right? So
right, exactly.
What would you put on that last tap?
So that last tap would be peanut butter stout or a coconut porter or a Viracocha stout. Something that we've created some flavors with or invoked some some thought process of that pastry stout, whether it's our donut or we actually have a dulce de leche stout that's very popular that's in the tank right now. S'mores porter has been one of our popular beers last summer. We kind of came out with s'mores porter right about when spring just sprung and it's starting to get warm out. People are first starting to think about going out and camping. We brought out the s'mores porter. That was really popular for us. So yeah, we always hit one of those taps that'll get the beer geeks to go check it out.
I think you might have snuck 24 beers in there.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I want to go back to one of the things you said earlier about your space. You're limited in space, but you still have a barrel aging program. Can you tell us about that?
Barrel aging wise, we really don't have a spot to barrel age. Originally when I designed the place, I had a spot set aside for barrel aging. I figured we could fit about 30 barrels and whatnot. The reality is that I underplanned our space, as everybody does. And so what we did was we ended up carving out space in our dining room and our bar area to store the barrels. And so we put, Is
that what I'm sitting on?
Yeah, so we can fit about 4 barrels by our fireplace and another 12 barrels in the dining room, and we kind of sock them into places where you wouldn't expect. And I don't know how many times I've had guests in the brew pub say, hey, these barrels look really cool. That's a nice decoration. I'm like, oh, don't screw with them. They got beer in them.
You're doing the Lord's work right now.
Right, exactly. Eventually, I have approached them all about getting some more space. What's nice about we're in a 1 million square foot commercial space. There's tons of room. There's always people shifting around and whatnot. And actually, there's more room adjacent to us downstairs so that I can get my 48 or so barrels stored in a nice climate-controlled, lower temperature environment. So that's my ultimate goal. But right now, we stuff them wherever we can.
That's interesting you say that you actually expand within the mall. Now, is that your first choice, just keep on growing in the mall or get a new location?
It's my first choice to expand here, only because, in 2017 we brewed about 700 barrels of beer. Our brew house, our fermenter configuration and whatnot, we could probably do up to about 1,600 barrels in this facility, but we're limited for space for grain storage and for barrel storage and whatnot. So, yeah, my first choice would always be to, expand here until we exceed the capacity of the brew house.
So let's get back to the cellar, because that's what we're really here for, is to drink some beer.
Well, we're here to drink your beer, but since you brought out your cellar.
Let's go into inspiration beer number 2.
All right, so inspiration beer number 2. Being a guy that grew up in Belgium, I do have a favorite brewery that does Belgian-style beers. They're an extraordinarily small brewery down in Florida. Now, I'm talking domestic Belgian beers, right? These are Belgian styles. Obviously, so little history before I crack this bad boy open. Breweries in Belgium make one beer, right? So, Chimay makes, 4 beers, but Kwak makes 1 beer. So the breweries typically, historically, have made 1 or 2 beers. West-Vleteren makes their West-Vleteren 12, right? When I talk about Belgian breweries, I'm talking about Belgian-style beers. There are some really great breweries that do Belgian styles, like we talked about the brewery already. If you notice, 2 of the 3 beers I pulled out of the cellar are Belgian styles. There's another great brewery, though. I know the owner and brewer. He's an awesome guy. His name's Bob Sylvester. He has a brewery called St. Somewhere down in Tarpon Springs, Florida, which is about 40 minutes northwest of Tampa. He interestingly enough, has a very small brewery, but has beer in about 28 states. So this is a 2008 Saison Athene from Bob Sylvester at St. Somewhere. It's a very light, effervescent Saison. Saison being one of my favorite styles. See how much pressure this bad boy has.
Now this is interesting because Saisons don't normally age, though.
Saisons do not normally age. This particular Saison is bottle conditioned, so it will age in the bottle quite nicely. This one's been in my cellar only for about 6 months. I typically will not cellar a beer like this, but like I said, drinking beer or being around beer every day, I generally don't drink a lot of beer. So you can give this one a try. This is just a nice, easy drinking.
Wow.
Just cheers, guys.
Thanks.
To inspiration.
Inspiration. So it's a little flat. Maybe it's not conditioning as well as it should.
Yeah, what are you getting out for this first impressions?
So Saison style should be a little spicy, should be a little effervescent. Just a really nice mouthfeel. This one is not aged tremendously well. One of the dangers of cellaring beer.
But the basic flavors are definitely there. There's you're getting that farmhouse kind of flavor, a little bit of hay, a little grass. You get all those kind of those fun farmhouse flavors.
One of the interesting things to note, and I've had people mention this about my beers before. I get messages on Facebook all the time. If you look at my bottles, like this is the cherry chocolate stout. If you look at the top of that bottle, it says always keep this beer cold and consume fresh. I put that on the bottle because I know what the beer tasted like when I put it in the bottle, and it was perfect to us. It's not to say that none of the beers that we put in bottles will age, but because of exactly what we just tasted here, this beer has lost its effervescence. It hasn't bottle conditioned the way I thought it might, and it's been sitting in my cellar for 6 months, when it probably should have been consumed about 4 months ago.
So we'll never see that cellar aging cellarable symbol on one of the Explorium bottles?
You might. If we do the right beer that I feel comfortable with cellar aging, I'll be honest with you, I've had several people with the bourbon barrel aged cherry chocolate stout say, well, I'm going to cellar this, I don't care what you say. And I've told them, I said, honestly, man, I think that beer will cellar very, very well. Just don't let it get over 50 degrees. I mean, cellar it properly. Don't let it sit in a 70-degree closet, but let it sit in a 50-degree cellar. I think that'll cellar just fine. We have a quad that we're getting ready to release, corked and caged, kind of like, you see some of the Belgian beers. That might be one that we actually say allow this beer to age. So yeah, you might see that coming in the future. I mean, one step at a time. Our 1 year anniversary was 2 weeks ago.
I think this is a good time to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll talk about your plans for the next year following this 2018, and we'll finish off your cellar collection here and talk more about the Explorium beer. So we'll be right back.
Right on.
Welcome to Beer News. Certified fresh as of March 22nd. The readily available beer for this episode is Raised Grains Paradox Red. The GABF Gold Medal winning Imperial Red IPA. It's a full-bodied beer with a bright hop aroma and initial caramel notes that are enlightened by a slightly citrus acidic finish. In beer release news, Solid Non-Fail Stout is bottled, kegged, and ready to be released. Join the Tap Takeover podcast at Mobcraft on Good Friday, March 30th at 7 o'clock for the release party. This epic Imperial Coffee Maple Stout clocking in at almost 12% ABV is sneaky smooth. It's brewed with local ingredients, including roast barley from Proximity Malt, maple syrup from Cal's Honey Farm, and a custom blend of coffee from Anodyne Coffee Roasting Company. Pre-orders are still available, but won't be for much longer, so make sure to order yours today. New Glarus has recently confirmed that Strawberry Rhubarb will be back out this April. Make sure you're asking when it will arrive at your favorite spots because, just like last year, it will go fast. Pro tip for the traders out there, Strawberry Rhubarb will be in high demand for out-of-state trading. This beer news has been full of great Central Waters news. Peruvian Morning, a bourbon barrel-aged coffee stout, makes its return within the next couple of weeks, straight from Amherst. Crawlers are already available at the brewery, but 4-packs will soon be in stores within the next week or two. We'd like to take you back for a moment to the third part of our Central Waters interview, episode 25.
The fact that you guys are still very responsive to what your customers want, I think is probably the key to why you guys have stayed ahead of the curve.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's a really nice try, but we're still not going to make a New England IPA.
We're still trying. We're still trying.
Do you think it's a fad, or you think it's going to say? Yeah?
Yeah, I do. This is my personal
You're acting
opinion.
like you really don't want it to be a fad.
This
I
podcast
kinda
might
dig
be
it.
good. What do you enjoy about it?
You get more of the actual hop aroma, and not so much of the
How is
bitterness.
that different for you from a heavily hop pale ale or IPA? What makes it different?
I would say a lot of it's on the IBUs, the specific IBUs, right? So
you're talking about bitterness.
Yes, so you're getting
Not
definitely
hoppiness. You're talking about bitterness.
Exactly. It's all about 0 IBUs. I think with the hazy, fuzzy IPA.
Okay.
You get
so
the funness of the...
And the muddiness of the beer has nothing to do with what you enjoy.
Well, I'm also a huge fan of Firkins, and on Firkins you get a very soft mouthfeel, which you're able to get out of a hazy kind of beer as well.
It's full of flour.
That was gross. No, when it's done well.
But if we made a beer that was 0 IBUs and super hops, and it was crystal clear.
Yeah, I would love it.
But it wouldn't be a New England IPA, it wouldn't catch the fat.
Well, fine.
Right?
Yeah, let's dance with the devil.
That's what I don't like about the fat.
And you would still be asking us the same question.
So this is my point. This is what I'm narrowing down to what I don't like about the fat, is the fat has nothing to do with the flavor.
Yeah.
And the IBUs is that it's milky as shit. And people are drinking it because it's cool, because nobody else would drink something that looks like that. It looks like you mix a bunch of Tums into a glass. And so the flavor is what everybody likes. That flavor is achievable in any number of ways.
Flour?
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Yes, but you could make a beer that's presentable in terms of a clarity standpoint with that flavor profile. But it wouldn't match the style, so it would get rejected. And that's why I don't chase that trend.
Sure.
So trends aren't styles. Trends can turn into styles. And maybe I'll put my foot in my mouth in 5 years and we're making a New England IPA that looks like orange juice. I don't know.
We'll pull this audio out.
I will Simon won't be here anymore, probably.
He keeps saying that.
In breaking news, Central Waters has announced that they are brewing a hazy IPA. Reports out of Amherst are that Simon is still employed as head brewer. In upcoming beer events, join Eagle Park this weekend, Thursday, March 22nd through Saturday, March 24th, as they close up their Lincoln Warehouse tap room. Here's the beer release schedule for the weekend, and also, Chef Nathan Heck will be serving up a preview of their new food menu on Friday and Saturday. On Thursday, you'll be able to enjoy Double Dry Hopped Immortal Soul and Double Dry Hopped Set List. On Friday, Yabba Dabba Doo and Passion Fruit Milkshake. And Saturday, Huey Lewis and the Boozier and Mexican Chocolate Stout will be served. Join us for our private event at Tompkins Bar and Grill featuring a 5-course wing and beer pairing. Tickets are $30. Please call 414-258-9110 or Facebook message Flying Brian, the Wing King, to make reservations and prepay before seats are sold out. Mobcraft flagship beers will be featured along with a couple very limited beers. A special pouring of the Tap Takeover Podcast beer, the Solid Non-Fail Stout, will take place as we, the crew, will be recording a podcast at the event. Love the NFL Draft? Love to share and show off your collection of beer? Join us then on Thursday, April 26th in Green Bay, Wisconsin, as we team up with Badger State Brewing for a bottle share and draft party. Tickets are $5 and bring 2 bottles from your collection to share. Badger State, as well as other breweries, will be donating special release beers to raffle off. If you don't have a beer to share or unsure of what you should bring, still come with a charitable heart, and Badger State will help you with the bottle. Go to Badger State's Facebook page for event details and ticket link. Thanks for listening to this episode's edition of Beer News.
All right, thanks, Jim, for another great edition of Beer News. I don't know how you do it, man. Awesome. All right, so we're back at Explorium, and we're going to finish off the cellar collection here. You want to tell us about the last one here, Mike?
All right, so I have a beer from a brewery that recently fell into the realms of beers or breweries that I will never buy a beer from ever again. This is the last beer I have in my cellar from Avery Brewing. They were just acquired, and, God bless them. They reached the ultimate dream of getting bought out by, another big brewery or mega alcohol conglomerate. And, God bless them for it. But that just means that I won't buy their beer anymore. I still love the guys. They're awesome dudes. They make awesome beer. I'm sure the beer will get even better. And some people misunderstand that from me. I just don't support the mega alcohol conglomerates. I'm all about the little guy. I mean, the little breweries that struggle. And so anyway, enough about my soapbox. I'm stepping down.
Sure.
I'm on the ground. So we have this mega awesome beer, probably my favorite beer on the freaking planet. which is the barrel-aged coconut porter from Avery Brewing. This beer inspires me at many levels. If you taste it...
Well, I'll tell you what, let's cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to the little guy.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers to the little guy.
So one of the things that's inspiring to me about this beer, it's a barrel-aged coconut porter. You know, we're so used to, as, you know, beer consumers and beer geeks that we are, we're so used to barrel-aged beers being very barrel-forward. You know, oh, that was aged in a bourbon barrel because it tastes like frickin' bourbon. I don't like beers like that. Well, let me restate that. I love bourbon, so I like beers that taste like that, but to me that's not a beer, that's kind of like a bourbonized beer. So you'll notice when you try my barrel-aged beers, the barrel is very subtle. The vanilla comes through, a little bit of the dryness from the barrel, the tannininess, the roastiness from the barrel comes through, and whatnot. And I model my barrel-aged beers after this beer. It's one of those beers that's not overly barreled. You can taste the sweetness from the coconut, you can taste the porter, you can still taste the bourbon in the background, you can taste the barrelness of it, but it's not like barrel forward. So
I love the nose.
Oh, it's a great beer.
Oh, God.
Well, just the coconut is so well done in this.
Yes, it's phenomenal beer. Phenomenal. I am so sad that I can't buy it anymore. But wait a second. You guys can buy it and bring it to me.
You're still going to drink it.
So it isn't
I
an
still drink it.
anti-drink.
So to everybody listening, you can buy it and bring it to Mike.
So speaking of that, will you be putting the Brewers Association Independent Craft Brewers symbol on your labels?
Yes, so you'll notice that every label that we put out from day one has had the independent seal on it. We actually started we bottled our first beer in August of last year. I had the labels actually into final proof for printing when that whole program started. I was brewery number 32 to adopt that. The email came into my inbox, I clicked the link, I said agree, I signed the agreement, I sent it back, and I got that graphics right away to add to all our labels. So we have not yet produced a beer with a label that doesn't have that seal on there. Will we always be independent? Yes. You know, if somebody came and offered me $1 billion to buy Explorium, would I say yes? Yes. and I would expect those people like me who are very principled to never buy my beer again. And that's okay.
Also, if that same millionaire is looking for a podcast, we are not opposed.
Well, I tell you, I'll make a deal with you guys right now. If Constellation Brands comes to Explorium and buys me for $1 billion, I promise you I will come and buy the Tap Takeover podcast for $1 million a piece.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
on tape. That is on tape.
You got that.
Sold.
Not to be a cheap bastard after getting $1 billion. You guys are worth far more than that, though, but I'd lowball
Nah,
you.
actually.
It's just business.
Spoken like
right?
a well
Just business.
Just business, just business.
Also, at that point, Jim, you'll be off the podcast.
Mike, we're going to take your money, but we just cut Jim.
We'll be taking his share.
But this beer is inspirational to me because of all those reasons I stated. It's very subtle in the barrel, very big and bold in the flavors that they promote on the bottle, which is coconut and porter. Yeah, so it's awesome. So if you ever taste a coconut porter from me, so we have our toasted coconut porter on tap right now. If I ever barrel age it, it'll be like this. I strive to hit that. I'm not sure we'll be successful the first time, but that's very good beer.
And I will say that, as far as inspiration, when we tried the cherry chocolate imperial stout that you did with Cigar City and the barrel-aged version that we did for our promo video, we really did notice the subtlety of the barrel there. It was there more to enhance the beer, whereas, like you said, a lot of beers come out and it's all about the barrel and the barrel's the star. With these, there's much more a complementary role for the barrel.
Yeah, and all of my barrel-aged beers will always be like that. Jim's drinking my my vanilla, Three Saints Bay Imperial Stout. That's a beer that we filled 4 bourbon barrels of that beer. We pulled it out as soon as we could start tasting the bourbon. We aged it on some vanilla because I wanted that vanilla character. One of my favorite beers, too, is Worldwide Stout from Dogfish Head, which is an independent brewery, by the way. And they've stayed independent, which is really nice.
For now.
But that's a phenomenal beer. They were able to get this great vanilla flavor into this stout. That beer doesn't even come close. My beer doesn't come close to rising to that level. But that's kind of was the inspiration behind that vanilla, barrel-aged stout. But yeah, when we get inspiration from a lot of places, very seldom will we actually go out to copy a beer. It's just about drinking a lot of different styles, visiting breweries, getting inspiration, doing something similar, trying to do, like our peanut butter stout, which is the last bottle on the table, by the way. Segue into the peanut butter stout. The peanut butter stout is one of those beers that we started out. It was one of the when I first met my head brewer Kyle Siski. One of the first questions I ask a guy, anytime a guy is a brewer, hey, what's your go-to beer to make? He said, my peanut butter stout is awesome. I would love to make that beer. Oh, that's cool, man. How do you make that? And it's like, well, we use this, PB2, which is powdered, de-oiled peanut butter. Just throw it in a stout, and, it's a lot of it, blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, that sounds great. Well, the first time we made it, we didn't use enough. We actually took the, peanut butter stout, made it with the natural peanut butter, which is de-oiled, and then added a little bit of extract flavor to get the aroma and the flavor to come through. And in the end, as it aged, we ended up not liking it as much. So when we made the next batch, which is the batch we have in the bottle on the table, which is our second batch we've ever made, we committed to not using any extract flavors. And all of our beers, we work very hard to not use any extract flavors in. Other than vanilla. Vanilla, if you find somebody that does vanilla, that, it gets a good vanilla flavor in their beer, then, more power to them, not using an extract, but they went freaking broke trying to do that beer.
Super expensive.
A vanilla bean's, $7. If I was going to vanilla age a beer, it'd be, $8,000 worth of vanilla beans in a beer. It's just, not the best idea.
It doesn't make sense at that point.
Not too profitable.
This peanut butter stout that we did, we basically, put just a ton more peanut butter into the stout. We think it came out really well. It actually added a unexpected creaminess to the beer.
We were going to save it, but see, you're talking about it so much.
Hell yeah,
we got to go into it. Yeah.
As we're opening up the peanut butter stout, I want to circle back to your work with collaboration and promotion of Milwaukee beer, and also your work with, as you mentioned, the crafter space. Now, this is a unique business that's formed here in Milwaukee that's really helping drive the brands and entrepreneurship of Milwaukee.
Yep.
Tell us about your interaction with it.
One of the cool things about our beer culture in Milwaukee is that we've had some guys step forward to do the crafter space. So John Graham, Kyle Vetter, and Mike Anderson, three guys came together, and their whole idea was, to me, in retrospect, it's just like every other good idea, like those little stupid fidget spinners, it seems like, oh, it's not a great idea. Why did I think of it? These guys came forward with an idea that was kind of groundbreaking. The reality is they want to take ordinary people who are interested in maybe opening a brewery, take them into their program, teach them a little bit about all aspects of running a brewery, labeling and branding and, recipe development and all those things, and kind of give them a little taste of all those things. Very early on in my thought process to open a brew pub in Milwaukee, which started years ago, but really got serious about it in 2014, 2015. I reached out to John Graham, and he and I actually met at Story Hill, BKC, and sat down and had lunch. I bought him lunch one day and said, hey, what do you do with the crafter space? Just a really cool program to get more people involved in creating breweries in Milwaukee. From that relationship that was kindred there at Story Hill, he and I have continued to work together. We do once a year during Milwaukee Craft Brewery Week, we do a little segment here at the Explorium called Starting a Brewpub, Risk, Reward, and Red Tape, where I gather a panel of several brewery owners, and we sit in front of the room, and last time we had about 30 people bought tickets to attend this little event, and we talked about what does it take to create a new brewery. And what's the BS you got to deal with? What's the red tape you got to deal with? What's the stressors? And all those things. Are you sure you want to do this? And we do that, and it segues into hopefully them signing up some people for the crafter space, so that they can get educated and open a brewery in an educated fashion versus stepping off the turnip truck. Daddy's got a bunch of cash, and I'm going to buy some brewing equipment, and I'm going to open another shitty brewery, right?
Yeah.
Shitty breweries frickin' kill the vibe in the brewing community.
agree. You have to have the passion for it. Otherwise, why do you bother?
Yep. Nobody wants to tell you got a shitty brewery, but when you open a shitty brewery, you kill the vibe for everybody, and everybody's like dancing around the subject. Hey, man, you want some help? Blah, blah, blah. And quite honestly, as a brewery owner, I have a lot of people that get hold of me and say, hey, I want to open a brewery, or I want to be a brewer. Can you help me? No, I'm not a college. I'm not a campus. I'm a business. I make good beer. I try to keep it that way. We're a professional organization. You wouldn't dream of going to a civil engineering company or, God forbid, an airline and say, hey, I want to be an airline pilot. Can you put me in the right seat and we're going to take off in a Southwest jet and you teach me how to be an airline pilot while we fly down the fucking byways of the skies? No, you would never dream of that, right? You would go to college, you would get some experience or some education as a brewer, then you would go to some program and you get some experience as a brewer, and then you would approach a brewery and say, hey, I got this education, I got this experience, I'd love to fly with you. That's the way it works. And so the crafter space is that first step for people to really try to see if they can cut it or if they want to do it and if they want to go. So great program, very supportive of it. I've told John Graham over and over again, I'd love to have you bring your class here. We're a little detached from downtown, so he tends to, to gravitate toward downtown. I get it, and I'm totally cool with that. But I love what they're doing. I'm always here to support. If they ever need a backup, I'm here.
To hear what happens when you do approach a brewer and ask to become their brewer right away, listen back to our Central Waters episode with Simon and his trip and his journey through life and how he actually became the head brewer at Central Waters. And you'll learn, step one, do not talk to a brewery.
That's awesome. All right, I got to go back and listen to that one because I'm sure I can relate.
All right, before we move on, let's talk about this peanut butter stout.
So do you guys know who George Washington Carver is?
Yes.
Absolutely, the inventor of peanut
First
butter.
president.
Nice. All right, so if you go back to the Civil War era, there was all these sharecroppers, generally freed slaves that were cropping lands. They had the desire, they had the push, they had the land, but they had a product that nobody really wanted, right? So George Washington Carver went out and he was a college professor, he was a doctor. He found ways to use peanuts so that he could create a market for peanut oil and, diesel made from peanuts. This guy invented thousands of different uses of peanuts, but the reality is the most useful one was peanut butter, which is freaking awesome because all these sharecroppers now had a market for their crops. So in a little, homage to his ingenuity and his desire to help people of lesser fortune find fortune, we released Carver's Peanut Butter Stout. This peanut butter stout to me is, the first, I talked about the first iteration earlier. It just didn't have enough peanuts, so we added a little peanut extract and whatnot. This version, which is our second batch, we're getting ready to brew our third batch probably in the next 6 weeks. Very peanut forward. It doesn't have that big peanut nose. Okay, I got a little clue for you. Okay. Hey, listeners, if you're looking for a hot tip.
Pro tip.
If you try a peanut butter beer and it smells really like fucking peanuts, it's an extract. Peanuts are very subtle in aroma. You have to crack open a fresh jar of peanuts and put your nose in it to smell peanuts. So if you smell a peanut butter beer that's very big in the nose with peanuts, it's most likely an extract flavor, right? We do this beer without an extract flavor. So I say that because we get some hits on it because, it doesn't smell like peanuts. Well, you know what? It's because we use natural flavorings in this beer. Now, if you have a peanut allergy, I strongly recommend you do not drink this beer. There is a lot of fucking peanuts in this beer.
Or just drink till you don't feel feelings.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Or your throat closes.
But, yeah. Oh my God, he must have really loved the peanut beer. He's fucking dying.
He's dying doing what he loved.
But our goal was to create a peanut beer without any flavoring extract that, kind of grabbed that roastiness of the peanut, tasted like peanut butter, had a little bit of the creaminess. And I'll be honest with you, I'm in love with this beer. It does need to age a little bit when it's fresh. It's a little too roasty for me. And that's the roast malts coming out in that stout. Our 3 Saints Bay Imperial Stout has a big roast malt backbone, but as it ages, that roast malt kind of diminishes. The beer that we're drinking out of the cellar is probably, I think we brewed this beer back in November, so we're coming up on 4 months, which is the optimal time to drink this beer. Very, very good. Like I said, I'm in love with this beer. This is one of the reasons why my head brewer, Kyle, when I tasted this beer that he made on the homebrew scale, and I was like, man, I need this guy to brew beer with me.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. Jesus, what are you getting out of that peanut butter beer?
Well, actually, I had to pour a little bit of that coconut porter because the thing that really hit me on that coconut porter was the nose. And when you think of adjuncts, you think you're going to get a little whiff of something. But as you were talking, I'm like, I really had no idea. I mean, if you were just smelling that, you wouldn't know it's peanut butter.
Yep.
But you really taste that. You get that creaminess, too, of the peanut butter.
Yeah, I think it works really well with the
No,
stout.
it's a very nice mouthfeel to it as well.
Yeah, and the aroma for me is what really sells this beer. I get all the peanut butter on the aroma.
Really?
Yep.
See,
I do.
It's really interesting because I would say about 20% of the people that taste this beer say that, oh my God, it's so huge in peanuts. I don't know if I can drink it because it's so big in aroma. To me, when I smell this beer, I don't smell peanuts.
I don't smell peanuts at all.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, 60% of the people that smell it don't get the peanut aroma.
That's weird that you say that.
It is. No.
All I smell
And
is
that's
peanuts
why,
on
and
this.
that's why I had to pour that other one because I'm like, I'm not smelling anything on this.
So here's my challenge. I always throw this challenge and I do it all the time. I don't know. Maybe other brewers, I drive them crazy. I don't know. I mean, maybe they just think I'm a fucking asshole. But
That actually is true.
yeah, I know. We talked. But what I do is like I have guys coming all the time. Oh, hey, your coconut porter's really good, but that Hiawatha or whatever it is. Hiawatha's the train, isn't it? Whatever that coconut porter is from Maui Brewing, or City Lights coconut porter, or whatever coconut porter, blah blah blah. That's so much better. And I'm like, oh yeah, I get it, man. Everybody's taste is different. So what I suggest is, if you think somebody else's beer is better, bring it in, and we'll have the bartender pour a blind flight, and we'll taste all the beers side by side. And I anybody who listens, I challenge you, because honestly, we do this as brewers. If we're gonna brew a coconut porter, we're gonna brew a peanut butter stout, we'll put all the beers side by side on a blind flight and we'll taste them. I've done this with our quad, I've done this with our peanut butter, I've done this with our coconut. And when it's blind and you take the branding out, you take the hype out, you take the ratings out, you take all that stuff out, and you just taste them all side by side. That's what we do, and we only put out beers on our taps that have passed that test. I don't know, I hear it all the time.
So we'd like to switch gears for a little bit here, and we'd like to talk about social media do's and don'ts. So on the don't end, we have Dystopian Brewery out of Washington.
That was...
And on the do
That
end,
was epic.
we've got the king of Milwaukee brewery social media, Mike Doble. And the whole
would not say that.
Spanish Eddie fiasco with your rabid fans that you had to calm down from going after him. And we'd also like an update on the Globe heist.
You guys are killing me.
So
This is breaking news. Yeah, this is the gotcha journalism.
So the dystopian thing, if you haven't heard the story, go look it up. It was pretty rough. It was a brewery that reacted really badly to an online review.
Those guys are dicks, though.
They kind
total
of came
dicks.
off as really bad. There were some homophobic remarks made by the brewery. It was really unfortunate, and it was a clear case in what not to do in social media.
Yes.
And I think the way that you handled the Spanish Eddie situation, if you could speak to that, because I think it was a perfect do on social media. How a brewery should handle that.
All right, so first of all, before I talk about Spanish Eddie, my philosophy in life is friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. Right? That's my quote on Facebook. I mean, that's what I live by. If you go to my high school yearbook, which was like 100 years ago, it seems like, I graduated in 1987 from high school. If you look at my quote in my high school yearbook, it says, friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. I've always lived by the philosophy that if you can take those people around you, even those people that are kind of assholes that really don't like you, and make them your friends, then your life will be a richer place, right? Spanish Eddie, or Adam Caraway, a.k.a. Spanish Eddie, not to call him out.
1234 North Main Street.
You douchebag. Yeah, so that douchebag, he no, I'm just kidding. Adam is well known in the beer geek community. He said some things on social media. He said something like, tell Mike Doble, it's just another shit brewery following a shit trend. Tell Mike Doble to take his douchiness somewhere else, blah blah blah. Something like that.
It was
right?
all around the white stout what he
yeah.
had some kind of an issue with.
So we made a white stout. It's kind of like making a black IPA. A black India Pale Ale. Pale refers to it being lighter in color. What the fuck ever, dude? It's a fermented malt beverage.
Drink it, right?
So anyway, he said that at first, of course I saw red. I'm like, oh, who the frick is this guy? Who knows this guy? Blah, blah, blah. The reality is I just took a deep breath and I'm like, you know what? The guy's probably drinking some beer, probably saying some things. What I would say is talking out his ass, and I kind of just like, okay, take a deep breath. It's not that big of a deal. The reality, though, is I just kind of copied his post and posted it on my social media, and I said, this is what I have to deal with sometimes. Well, a lot of my fans, not fans of me, but fans of my brewery, jumped on board and started, beating on the guy pretty hard.
You do have a loyal following out there. Yeah.
Very hard.
Rabid, really some rabid fans, which is really, really gratifying. I mean, I don't expect anything from anybody,
Well, we'll get to the Globe heist in just a second. And how rabid your fans are.
So they jumped on him pretty hard, and actually after a while, I kind of started feeling a little bad because I know that this guy sees all this stuff. Just to spare you the gory details, I got a message from the guy saying, "Hey man, it's been a shitty," and I'm like, "Oh hey dude, what's up?
How are things going? When's your next visit?"
He goes, "Well, I'm changing my 4 tires because they've been slashed, and I want to come to apologize, but I can't right now." But the reality was, he's just like, I was drinking, and so whatever. So the bottom line is I said, well, it's just interestingly enough, the next day I was doing a Facebook Live with Matt Jensen, who does the State of Craft Beer book, and who's a super good dude. His book is awesome. If you haven't bought a copy, you should have it.
No, he's great. We actually interviewed him at the Wisconsin Beer Lovers Fest up at Bayshore Malt last year. That was a real fun guy.
He did a great job with that book. He got just very talented guy. He was doing a Facebook Live the next day, and I was on the schedule for 3 o'clock, so I just kind of nonchalantly put it on Facebook. Hey man, if you got a hair on your ass, you would meet me at Enlightened Brewing to do this podcast with me, and we'll talk about it on the air. Kind of throwing the gauntlet down a little bit. In the end, we both arrived about a half hour early. We got pretty hammered.
I think he brought beer.
He did bring beer. Actually,
he
he brought more than just beer. He brought probably some of the best beers on the planet.
Oh, shit.
With him. So Adam came to this event a little sheepish, and I met him, and we talked a little bit. He goes, "Hey man, I'm really sorry." And I brought, to make up, let's sit down and drink some beer. And and I'm all about community being built around sitting down and settling our differences over beer. I mean, that's like my mantra, right?
That is the definition of mea culpa, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Saying sorry over beer, I believe is actually the definition.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And he brought a vertical flight of a beer called Sticky Monkey. You guys familiar with this beer?
Yeah.
The Sticky Monkey. Yeah, I know. So he brought a 2015, a 2016, 2017 Sticky Monkey, which is a barrel-aged quad Firestone Walker. He cracked the first bottle and handed it over to me and says, "Here you go." And I'm like, "Dude, okay, apology accepted. Let's sit down and drink." And we did, and we drank this the two of us, mind you, drank a 3-year vertical flight of Sticky Monkey.
Feeling pretty good.
And we were feeling pretty good. And then we went on the air.
This was before your interview.
So by the time we got on the air, we were like bosom buddies, and hey man, I love you.
There's no heat here, man.
No, it was all good. To me, he said some stupid things. It's regrettable on his part. He's lucky he wasn't in the same room with me when he said them, because I probably would have kicked his ass. But since we didn't. We both had a time to cool down, and we drank some beer. It was actually all right, you know?
And for people watching on the outside, what we saw was a big blow up, and then what we saw afterwards is pictures of you guys like hanging out. I think you brought him to the Explorium Brewpub at one point, and he was
Guest
pouring some
bartender,
beers, and he had a little name tag on. I mean, basically you took an enemy and made him a fan and a friend of the brewery.
Yeah,
and that is definitely the way to do it on social media.
Yeah, no, and he's a super good guy. I mean, in the end, he regretted what he said. We had him as a guest bartender. We made him an Explorium name tag. It said Spanish Eddie. But Adam's an all right guy. He's now a friend for life. And rather than me saying bad things about him, now when I see him, I'll still call him a douche. But
That's what friends do, right?
But that's what friends do. So we are now bonded over a vertical flight of Sticky Monkey, and I'll never forget it.
Well, speaking of actual douches, let's talk about the Great Globe Heist of 2017. Because our listeners need to know what exactly happened there, and what was the social media impact of your presence out there.
Oh yeah, so here's the thing. We right before we opened in 2017, it was middle of January 2017. We're trying to get this place open. It was wicked stressful trying to get everything done. My wife went to the store. I think she went to American Supply and Surplus or something. Found this kind of cool, vintage looking globe. It wasn't expensive or anything. She brought it in and goes, "Hey, we need to put some globes." So she brought this globe in, and we had it on our front display. And on New Year's Eve, some guy came in and snatched our globe. The reality is like any modern business, we have cameras in 16 different locations. We caught the guy on very high definition video. It wasn't like it was a big deal, like he stole a lot from us, but it was just kind of the audacity and kind of the douchiness of, him taking our globe. So
I watched the video too, and it was like a 10-minute process. It was like moving towards the globe, backing away. Somebody's watching. All right, here we go towards the globe.
He really wanted that globe.
What did this globe look like?
He waited until there were no servers in sight.
It wasn't a special globe by any means. So this is New Year's Eve about 8:45, 9 o'clock. The band was setting up. We had a live music in here on New Year's Eve. The band was setting up, and so we didn't have a host. The servers were kind of doing their thing, and they're behind the host stand, on their phones, I'm sure, which is strictly against the rules, I'm sure. The dude, copped our globe, whatever. My wife's like, on Thursday the following week, so where's our globe? I haven't seen our globe. So I'm pretty
she notices globe.
Yeah, no, I know. So I'm pretty skilled at going back in the videos and say, okay, the globe's there, the globe's there.
How many hours of footage did you have to roll back through to find that globe thief?
Dude, it took me literally like 5 minutes to find the dude. So anyway, I found the dude. I took a clip, I posted it online, and just said, hey, if anybody's seen this douchebag, let me know. And it blew up. I mean, we had probably 30,000 views of that video. I had 500 shares by all of our, kind of loyal fans. And it's not like it was a big deal, a big monetary loss or anything, but people are just like, man, it's a violation.
Don't be a douche.
Don't be a douche.
There's nothing sacred. A man's globe can't even hang out in his brewery anymore.
So to top it all off, which kind of cool, I mean, very gratifying, is we actually had one of our regular customers, and actually a guy that does my tours when I'm not available. He actually made a wanted poster, and that's still hanging up, And I'm like, justice is best served cold with a side dish of public shaming. So we got that poster up. And then right at our anniversary party about a week and a half ago, a bunch of Mug Club members and regular customers got together, and they actually bought us a globe that looks very similar, and they presented that to us at the 1 year anniversary, which was kind of cool, a cool closure. I'm still going to find this asshole, though. One day I'll come across this guy, but, kind of a cool closure to this.
Well, just let us know when the posse forms. We will be lead deputies.
You know what's really funny? Talking about the Spanish Eddie thing in the social media. Adam posted that, and everybody was on him, and people were unfriending him and everything on social media. And then when the guy took the globe, they're like, somebody commented, and it was the funniest thing ever. I was sitting in my easy chair about midnight, and I'm just laughing my ass off. Somebody said, all Spanichetti did was comment on one of your beers. This guy's going to need witness protection. I thought that was just hilarious. Yeah, just really
it speaks
fitting.
to the rabid nature of your fans.
Yeah, no, we have some good people that like our beer.
I want to talk about what's coming up for 2018, but before you answer that, I just want to say that when we were first communicating and I sent you a message on Twitter and I didn't know it was you, I said, this is probably, if you can pass this on the mic, and you're like, I have no people, I am the person. So I just want you to know that, as you're talking about social media and all this stuff that's going on, you are the guy that kind of works all that. So that's pretty cool. If people want to communicate with Explorium, it's you.
Yeah, so if somebody's going to call me a douche, I'm going to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I do, and I'll be honest with you, I really enjoy that aspect of this job. Day to day, I really don't have a day-to-day job. I have a bar manager, a front of house manager, I have a chef, I have all these people. My chef does some posting, my bar manager does some posting and whatnot. If somebody wants to talk to me on social media or somebody wants to post about a beer and has a question, I'm typically the guy who's answering. I don't have social media people. And to me, that's kind of the fun part of it, that's, interfacing with people that are curious about my brand is a really cool thing. A lot of fun.
Tell us about the next coming year. We're just starting, so what are your big plans coming 2018?
So 2018 is our second year in business. In the first 12 months, we made 70 different beers, and that was, a bit of a challenge. So it was more than one beer a week. If people follow our social media, they probably already see my trend. I'm kind of pushing our cocktail program a little bit. I'm kind of highlighting to people that, we're just not a one-trick pony. We don't do just beer. I'm doing a $4 cocktail every week. So we have a new cocktail every week that we're doing for $4 so people can try that out. We do have a lot of new beers coming. We have a Schwarz beer, which we've never done before. Dark Helmet from Titletown is one of my favorite beers locally. We're doing a Schwarz beer that I hope is as good as Titletown's Dark Helmet. So we got all this stuff coming. We're revising our menu. We're getting into some new food options. One of the things that we started out with a massive menu, pared it down, and as we got more popular, we've kind of built it back up. We got some new things coming. As far as beer goes, it's hard because the creative on beer is so difficult to try something new, that every time you try something that you think is new, people kind of think that maybe you're copying somebody else. And the reality is we sit down, we drink beer, we get inspiration, and we create whatever comes naturally. So I'm hoping that after 2018, 2017 we did 70 different beers. I'm hoping after 2018 we got about another 40, 50 more.
So any special releases then in the pipeline for the first half of 2018, let's say?
All right, so the biggest thing that sticks out in my mind, special release-wise, is we took our quad, we put it in some bourbon barrels, we threw in some cherries and vanilla. So we have this great bourbon barrel-aged cherry vanilla quad coming. That's going to be released on Valentine's Day, which is, a week from tomorrow. So that's coming up very soon. We have our s'mores porter, a full batch of our s'mores porter coming very soon. We have a Polish lager coming out, the Schwarz beer, so a bunch of new stuff coming out next.
So as we wrap up here, Mike, I want to thank you again for tonight's evening, sharing your cellar with us. And we also really need to point out, you're the first brew pub that we've interviewed tonight, and you've got some amazing food. And a lot of beer-inspired food and food that has beer ingredients in it. So we encourage all our listeners to come out, get some food, and it's an amazing thing.
So
thank you, man.
Give your chef a shout out, because you
Yeah.
actually stole the chef from somebody. Didn't you?
Yeah, so our chef is highly invested in this place. I talked about Kyle Siski, our head brewer. A lot of people that have brewed beer in Milwaukee know him because he worked at Northern Brewer for so long. But our chef is a home brewer in his own right, and he comes up with a lot of good ideas for our beers. I actually met him when he was the chef at the packing house. I was able to entice him away from the packing house with the promise of helping us develop the beer program and quality assurance, and the guy
Drinking in the day.
a lot of day drinking. A lot lot of day drinking. But no, Chef Nick Sheeler is awesome. The Packing House is probably sad to lose him, although they gained a really great chef in their own right. He's really the driving force behind our menu. The guy does a really great job. Speaking of that, you talked about new beers. We got new menu coming out by the end of February as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, this interview has been a fun ride, and we really appreciate you sitting down with us, Mike, and talking through the entire brewery, talking through the brew pub aspect of it, the social media aspect of it. It seems like you have a hand in every single aspect of this brewery, and that's fun to see.
No, it's really my pleasure. Anytime you guys want to come back and your listeners want to hear me rattle, let's do it.
Thank you.
All right, we will take you up on that. But it looks like we are out of beer for now, so
cheers,
for me,
guys.
Cheers. So for me, for Alex,
Randy.
I'm Jim.
Jesus?
And I'm Mike.
well, thank you for joining us. It's been a solid non-fail production.